بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل Muhammad. Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Before I start studying the hadiths concerning the martyrdom of Lady Fatima Zahra and what has happened to the lady according to historical sources, it's of vital importance to bear in mind that we have hadiths in the Shia books and we have hadiths in the books of Ahl Sunnah concerning those events and developments taking place after the demise of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What matters here and what is important here is that usually the brothers from other schools, when we apply and when we refer to some Shia books and hadiths from Shia books, they may say that no, it's not acceptable, you have to show it, you have to prove it from the books of Ahlus Sunnah. The point is that when we want to study the events that took place after the Prophet, we have to behave and we have to act like a detective. You have to look for very, very small indications, clues, and studying very, very tiny pieces of information to put them together and to find all the parts of the jigsaw puzzle. So here what we have to bear in mind is that we have a principle in the jurisprudence of our brothers of Ahl Sunnah, and that is called masalih mursala. There are some expediencies that has to be taken care of, and they should be considered of their vital importance, and that they have priority over other things. One of these expediencies and interests that matters a lot and they have priority is to protect the religion, and by the religion it means Sunni faith. So when they face a dilemma sometimes to tell the truth, and this telling the truth is going to damage the picture of the religion the way it has been depicted. So what is the duty here? According to Shia, you have to tell the truth no matter what is the consequence. And actually what you have to look for is the truth. And the religion is the religion of truth. And if the truth is going to make you lose, you have to do that. If the truth is going to hurt your faith, you cannot hide the truth. But in that understanding, because the cause of religion and supporting the faith of people is very important, you can hide the truth in order to help people keep the very faith they have. This is the reason that we see that lots of the scholars, when they come to talk about the historical facts, they just try to sweep it under the carpet, and they do it qurbatan ilallah. They think that this way they are protecting the iman and the faith of people, and they are helping people to love the khulafa, to love the specific people among the companions of the Prophet, and this way they are serving the cause of Islam. This makes it very difficult when there have been such approach in the history. In order to bring some proofs and documents for this, I would refer to some sources. Then we will see that what was the approach of the scholars towards the historical facts. One of the famous scholars is Muhammad bin Abi Ya'la. He has a book, Tabaqatul Hanabila. In the very book, volume 1, page 30, when he talks about the challenges among the Sahaba, there were challenges among the companions. And now we read these things in the historical books. What should we do about them? He says, وَمِنَ الْحُجَّةِ الْوَاضِحَةِ الثَّابِتَةِ الْبَيِّنَةِ الْمَعْرُوفَةِ. This is the established, firm, fixed rule which is clear and crystal for the ulama, and that is ذِكْرُ مَحَاسِنِ أَصْحَابِ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ, is to mention the good things about the companions of the Prophet, كُلُّهُمْ أَجْمَعِينَ, about all of them, وَالْكَفْ عَنْ ذِكْرِ مَسَاوِيهِمْ, and we have to abandon mentioning ugly things about them. So we are not allowed to talk about the dark things in their lives. We are just allowed to talk about the positive side of their lives, and we cannot talk about those dirty and dark side in their lifestyle and in their history. والكف عن ذكر مساويهم بالخلاف الذي شجر بينهم. And we are not allowed to mention whatever has happened among them. So you see that from the time of Muawiyah, as Ibn Abil Hadid Mu'tazili very well explains this, there was a kind of emphasis on the position of Sahaba. Sahaba didn't have such position that they have today in the eyes of Ahlus Sunnah, in the eyes of the Muslims. So the approach towards them was very realistic. And they were humans like others. They were human that they could be good, could be bad, they could do very great things, and at the same time they could fail. You see that, for example, the hadith that people were talking at the time of the second Khalifa and saying that the paying allegiance to Abu Bakr was a hasty act, that we didn't think about it. So Abu Bakr, the image of Abu Bakr which exists today for the Sunni, it didn't exist for the people at the time of the second Khalifa. So the hadith says that Umar ibn al-Khattab heard about it. So he delivered a lecture and he said, yes, it was a hasty act paying allegiance to Abu Bakr, وَلَكِنْ وَقَلَّهُ شَرَّهَا. But Allah protected us from the evil to come from that choice and that election that we had. And actually he was appointed by Umar and supported by him. The way that they and also Umar himself looks at the Khilafah of Abu Bakr, this is not what was depicted later, and they tried to make it very unique to say that they were the chosen people from among the Sahaba, and they have fabricated hadiths about them, that they don't want to get into that. So the image that was made from Sahaba, and later on they established the fiqh and sunnah and hadith on that image of Sahaba, and especially the Khulafa, later on they were not capable to break it. They were not capable to think opposite, and such approaches were taken that we cannot narrate anything negative about the Khulafa and the Sahaba. So we want to study whether Lady Fatima Zahra is killed by some of the Sahaba or not. So this is the debate. The Shia claims that those who were in charge, they were involved in killing Lady Fatima Zahra, and certainly our Sunni brothers, they deny it. You want to study it in a fair way, without any prejudice, without any bias, you have to go through the history. But the decision was already made that side. And this is one of the differences between, again, Shia and Ahlus Sunnah, that for Shia there are criteria before going into the history. We have criteria about what is right and what is wrong, and through that criteria we judge the history. But for the Sunni side, all the criteria is derived out of the history. So the history itself is a criteria. The way that Abu Bakr is chosen, the way that Umar is chosen, the way that Uthman and Ali are chosen, the way that Muawiyah came to Khilafah. So they study the history, and out of this, studying the history, their criteria are driven. While for the Shia, the criteria exist according to the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet, and through those criteria they come to judge the history and to say that this person did right or wrong. So again, this is one of the departure points here. So by the very approach that they have towards the Khulafa, it is very natural that they say that we cannot narrate anything negative about them. We only have the right to talk positive about them and to mention things which are very nice. Another famous Sunni scholar in the field of Hadith and Rijal is Shamsuddin al-Zahabi, in his famous well-known book Siyaru A'lam al-Nubala, volume 10, page 92, when he's talking about the very issue that what should we do about the stories we find about Sahaba that might be a kind of controversial issues. He says, كما تقرر عن الكف عن كثير مما شجر بين الصحابة وقتالهم. It is established for Ahlus Sunnah that we should abandon narrating things about the clashes and challenges and fightings among the Sahaba. And he says, وَمَا زَالَ يَمُرُّ بِنَا ذَلِكَ فِي التَّوَابِينِ وَالْكُتُبِ وَالْأَجْزَاءِ. Still these things are in our books, as if he says that why they are still in the books, why you are not deleting them from the books. وَلَكِنْ أَكْثَرُ ذَلِكَ مُنْقَطِعٌ وَضَعِيفٌ وَبَعْضُهُ كَذِبٌ. And he says some of these are very weak, or they are lies, or they are hadiths without any connection and chain of narration. This is the claim of Zahabi. There are lots of hadiths about those events taking place among the Sahaba that the chain of narration is sahih according to standards of Ahl Sunnah. Anyhow, he says, وَهَذَا فِيمَا بَعَيْدِينَا وَبَيْنَ عُلَمَائِنَا. These hadiths, these narrations are in our books before our scholars. Then he says, فَيَنْبَغِي, this is the fatwa, فَيَنْبَغِي طَيُّهُ وَإِخْفَاؤُهُ. Our duty is to hide them and keep them secret. بَلْ إِعْدَامُهُ. But even more than this, our duty as Muslims, as Sunnis, is to delete all these things from the books. So as a true Sunni Muslim, you have to delete anything you find in the books that could be a kind of negative thing about Sahaba, especially about the Khulafa. And the question is that if there is such approach, how can we find the truth in their books? And how can they impose it on us that if you want to prove something from historical about the history of Islam, you have to prove it from the very famous books of Ahlus Sunnah. The famous books of Ahlus Sunnah are famous because they applied the very method of omitting and deleting. And this is a fact. You can find hundreds of such examples in the Sahih that I have collected such hadiths that the narration comes in Sahih in a way, and you find it in other books that you see the text is totally different. It is censored and lots of things are deleted or changed in a smooth way in this Sahih. And this is how it has to be. This is how, according to the Sunni approach, has to be towards the history. So we are not allowed to mention negative things about them. And if still we find them in the books, we have to delete them. Now imagine if you are a Sunni scholar and you have access to a very old version of Sahih Bukhari, for example. Imagine, and you open the book and you find in it, for example, the story of the martyrdom of Lady Fatima Zahra is mentioned, and in that hadith it is mentioned that some of the Sahaba are responsible for that. As a Sunni scholar, as a Sunni individual, as a believer, what is your duty? They say your duty is to delete that from that book, is to cut and put it out, is to burn that hadith. Then it will not be accessible for the others. He says, بَلْ إِعْدَامُهُ, more than hiding it, we have to destroy that hadith. What is the reason? لَتَصْفُوا الْقُلُوبِ وَتَتَبَفَّرَ عَلَى حُبِّ الصَّحَابَةِ. Then the hearts are pure and clean in the love of Sahaba. So you see, I said the criteria is there. The criterion is that we have to love Sahaba without any differentiation. We have to love all of them. There are conflicts among them. We have to delete anything about the conflicts. Then people can easily love them. وَالتَّرَزِّي أَنْهُمْ, people can say رَزِيَ اللَّهُ أَنْهُمْ. وَكِتْمَانُ ذَلِكَ مُتَعَيَّنٌ عَنِ الْعَامَّةِ. And he says it is wajib to hide these things from all lay people, from ordinary Sunni people. Even if the scholars have access to these hadiths, you're not allowed to narrate them for people. وَآهَادِ الْعُلَمَاءِ, even the normal scholars, these muftis that they go and study, students, they study in the seminaries of Ahlus Sunnah for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, then they go and preach here and there. He says even for that level of scholars, we are not allowed to mention those hadiths. وَقَدْ يُرَخَّصُ فِي مُطَالَعَةِ ذَلِكَ خَلْوَةً. It is permissible to read these things in privacy, khalwatan, in secret, in privacy, لِلْعَالِمِ الْمُنْصِفِ, for a scholar who is fair, Who is a fair scholar? Al-Ariyya min al-Hawa. There is no women wish and the pollution in the heart. بشرط أن يستغفر لهم. But under the condition that still he does istighfar for Sahaba. Means that the condition to be permitted to read the history and those hadiths is that by reading all those things is not going to change your view about them, and you still love them and you do istighfar for them. Under that condition, only very specific scholars, not the normal ones, they are allowed to read about the historical events. There is another book, Sharh al-Aqidah al-Wasitiyya, for Ibn Taymiyyah. Bin Usaymin, one of the contemporary Wahhabi scholars, he has done a kind of commentary on this book. And then in the page 286, he comes to talk about these challenges among Sahaba, the fight and conflicts among them, and he says, and he reprimands and blames Shia for narrating these things. Then he says, فَالْوَاجِبْ عَلَيْنَا تَجَاهَ هَذِهِ الْأُمُورِ. What is the duty of us as a Muslim before these events? We find these things in the books that, for example, Lady Aisha caused the Battle of Camel, causing the martyrdom of lots of mu'mineen and the death of more than 10,000 people. So, as Talha, Zubayr and Aisha were the ones who waged such a war against the Khalifa, and we cannot deny these things. These are there in the books. What should we do? He says, فَالْوَاجِبْ عَلَيْنَا تَجَاهَ هَذِهِ الْأُمُورِ أَن نَسْكُتَ عَمَّا جَرَى بَيْنَ الصَّحَابَةِ. It is wajib to keep silent about these things. وَأَلَّا نُطَالِعَ الْأَخْبَارَ وَالتَّارِيخ. It's very interesting. He says it is haram. It is haram to read history. It is haram to read the hadiths in these issues. فالواجب, he says, Allah نطالع الأخبار. It is wajib not to read, means to read is haram. إلا المراجعة للضرورة. Unless if there is a very urgent need to go and study, some Shia are saying something, we have to read the hadith to find a kind of a weak point, or to create a weak point in the hadith to say that no, the hadith is weak. Only for that occasions we can read the hadiths, otherwise we are not allowed to go into those hadiths. So as you see, there was such an approach that we have to hide anything we find that can be against the Khulafa and Sahaba. So when it was such approach underground for 15 centuries, and still the same approach is there, and then you expect, how can you expect that the truth to be found there? So you have to look, as I said, for very indirect, hidden clues that they didn't feel necessary to delete it. So we shouldn't expect to find the hadith in a book like Sahih Bukhari, like Sahih Muslim, like the other Sahih. If such things were to be mentioned in these books, then these books were not the Sahih. We have scholars who were stronger than Bukhari and Muslim. Tabari is really stronger than Bukhari in many aspects. But why Tabari doesn't have such a position that Bukhari has? Because Tabari is more outspoken, and Bukhari is very conservative. There are hadiths that, for example, Muhammad bin Sa'd mentions in his book concerning the Khulafa that could be negative about them. Bukhari, when he reaches to these hadiths, he says, kaza wa kaza, this and that. He deletes the terms of the hadith and he says, this and that. Means that totally it is censored. So there was such an approach as a widespread phenomenon among the scholars, and you shouldn't expect the ones who did something, those who stood with them, to expect them to come and confess what they have done against the daughter of the Prophet. Don't expect the criminals today, the criminal countries who do something wrong against the people, at the time of media, when media is there, reporters are there, TVs are there, it's being recorded, it's being filmed, then you see that they come with different narratives, they deny it, they bring different narratives just to deny it. So the criminals, after finishing their job, they don't accept the responsibility for that. How can you expect something which is done 15 centuries ago, that is done, and the people to come and accept the responsibility, especially when there is such a big consequence for that, killing the daughter of the Prophet? And who could dare to write such a thing? Who could dare to write such a thing? If you were a scholar narrating something that the system, the politicians, they didn't like, you could lose your life, you could lose your everything, you could lose your position, you could lose your position as a scholar, you could lose your scholarship. And you know, people, they have life, they have expenses, they have to live, they have family to take care of. Then people think about these things. And they were like that. For example, As-Safti in Al-Wafi bil-Wafayat, volume 3, page 260, he mentions the story of Imam al-Hakim an-Nayshapuri. Imam al-Hakim an-Nayshapuri is one of the outstanding Sunni scholars. He has the book Al-Mustadrak al-Sahihain. In that book, he has collected hadiths that have the quality of being sahih, but they are not collected by Muslim and Bukhari. So he has mentioned lots of those hadiths, and he says that Sahihun ala shart al-Shaykhain, the hadith meets the quality of both Muslim and Bukhari, or the qualities of one of them. In Al-Wafi bil-Wafayat, As-Safdi says that, narrates a story about Hakim al-Nayshapuri. He says that دخلت على أبي عبد الله الحاكم, a person by the name Abu Abdul Rahman al-Sulami. He says, I went to Imam Hakim al-Nayshapuri, and he was in his house. لا يمكنه الخروج إلى المسجد. He couldn't go to masjid. Imam Abu Ahl al-Sunnah, like Hakim al-Nayshapuri, they don't let him to enter masjid. وذلك من أصحاب أبي عبد الله بن كرام. The followers and those who were around Abi Abdullah bin Karam, they didn't let Hakim Nayshapuri to enter masjid. وَذَلِكَ إِنَّهُمْ كَسَرُوا مَنْبَرَهُ. They destroyed the pulpit of Imam Hakim Nayshapuri. So it means that they abandoned him from going to class to teach. And he had to stay home because those charlatans could kill him or to hurt him. وَمَنَعُوهُ مِنَ الْخُرُوجِ. They didn't allow him to go out of the house. They said, you have to stay home and you're not allowed out. This person, As-Sulami, says, فَقُلْتُ لَهُ لَوْ خَرَجْتَ وَأَمْلَيْتَ فِي فَزَائِلَ هَذَا الرَّجُلِ شَيْئًا لَاسْتَرَحْتَ مِنْ هَذِهِ الْمِحْنَةِ من هذه المنحة. He says that I told to Hakim that go out and mention some hadiths in the virtues of Muawiyah. Then they will let you go up. Because those people were Umayyads, and they were extremists. And this person, Hakim Nayshapuri, was a very fair person at the time that speaking about Ahlul Bayt could cause lots of consequences, and it could be very costly. This person narrated some of those hadiths. So this friend of him, As-Sulami, tells him, go, and people now narrating hadiths in the virtues of Muawiyah. Go and narrate some hadiths, then they will let you into masjid. Then you will get your scholarship back. You will have your salary back. He says, when I told this to Hakim Nayshapuri, he said that فَقَالَ لَا يَجِيءُ مِنْ قَلْبِي لَا يَجِيءُ مِنْ قَلْبِي. My heart cannot do that. My heart doesn't allow me to do that. I cannot accept such a shame to mention hadiths. He says, يعني Muawiyah, in the virtues of Muawiyah, while I don't believe in this. So you see, even if a person was Hakim Nayshapuri, just not narrating hadith in the virtues of Muawiyah was enough that you had to be imprisoned in your house. We have Imam an-Nasai, one of the 6 Imams of Ahlus Sunnah. When he reached to Damascus, they beat him because he had already written a book in the virtues of Imam Ali alayhi salam, Khasais Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib. So in Damascus, they told him that you have to write a book in the virtues of Muawiyah. When he denied to do that, they beat him and they injured him so severely that after those injuries he passed away. So even if you were at such a position to be a great Imam, but you were not just mentioning hadiths for Muawiyah, they would kill you, let alone if somebody wanted to talk about Khulafa. So how could you expect a person to dare to write something against the Khulafa if something was done by them? Just let's assume that if something was done by them, who could dare to write it in the books? So the first study of the history is that and we cannot wait for the declarations to be there. I mean, in the Sunni books and even in the Shia books at that time, at that era, because it could cause not only the life of the writer, it could cause the life of the family and the tribe, and it could be a unforgivable sin for a number of people, not only for the person who was about to write such a thing. The fear was there, and people wouldn't dare to mention such things about the history. Inshallah, we'll continue with this. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad.